Turns out we weren't done with the enemies yet. I discovered that we have another issue happening with enemy 2, the following enemies. So I'm going to uncomment out that collision information, and then we'll go back into the game. And I can see now when I hit the enemy, my health bar went all the way down, except I haven't lost the game yet. So theoretically, the game should have reset. I'm even going to attempt to clear everything, and it has not done so. So we have to do a little digging to figure out where this is happening, because we have all of these, they're all using the same method, the handle player-enemy collision, so that would be a good place to start. So when we look into player-enemy collision, what we're going to do is set a value. So I'm going to say, enemy damage is going to be equal to E.damage, because that's the amount of damage that one can inflict, and then we're going to log that out. And a new trick I learned recently, if you put curly braces around a value when you're logging it out, you don't have to put the value name in quotes, put a plus sign, and then the value. It's going to give you exactly what you want. So now, if I try and catch something, we can see enemy damage 50 for the ghost, the bat 10, this bat 10, and when I go, whoa. So that's the problem. We lost everything because we now subtracted enemy, this string, from a numerical value. Now, this is one of the problems that can sometimes occur when we are working with a dynamically typed language like JavaScript. So because it does not enforce value types, issues like this can arise. So we can see everything else works except for the following enemy. So that slime, which is a chasing enemy, if I hit it again, we can see my health went away in the first hit, but the damage I'm taking is enemy, not a number. So that tells us we need to go into follow here, and it becomes apparent that when we construct a following enemy, we pass in the scene, X, Y, texture key, the damage value, and type. But we never used that damage value. So we need to assign it. Now if we go into here, we can see that in the standard enemy it is using it. So let's go ahead and say this dot enemy, no, not this dot enemy, this dot damage. It's going to be equal to the damage value that is being passed in. And now if I run into Slimer, you can see that it did register 50. And hit the ghost, that's 50, so there, 10, 10. All right, so that's a pretty big fix, because otherwise our following enemies are worthless because they don't work. So we don't need to keep that in there, but do remember the curly braces around a value will then show you that value plus its it'll show you the variable plus its value. So that's a pretty slick way of logging things out. Now we can clean things up a little bit here because we really don't need to have these three statements. What we really want is just to have enemies here and have enemies collide. So right now we create all of the enemies, then we add their collisions with the physics layer, set the world bounds on them. But these enemies here, we could just as easily add them the same way that we're adding the ones through this loop. We could add them to the group as well. So instead of adding their physics in here, I'm going to just comment those two lines out. I'm not going to use them anymore. And now after I've created the enemies group, then I can say this dot enemies dot add, and then add in enemy. This dot enemies add enemy 2. So we add these two individuals to the enemies group, as well as the rest of these. Then we have all of the enemies go there. We can now get rid of those two, well, not those two lines. Let's try again. Get rid of these two lines. So the only thing we really care about, so we might as well just put all of the enemies, the first one we made, the following one, and then the whole collection of enemies that we're working with, we'll just dump them all into this single enemy group. So when I save this, let's see what's going on here. Oh, 87, where's line 87? Oh, and it's this dot enemy. It's not always easy to remember to put in or this keyword. And now let's see, yep, works. Other ones work. So all of the enemies are now part of just one group, so it's a little bit easier to manage. The enemies group does not have to contain enemies that are only of the enemy class. It can have enemies, it can have following enemies, so it can, it's all good with that. So this is just a little both update and, more importantly, a fix to a small problem that was missed in the code.